Alright guys, BLM here, back with a new video, and in this video we're back with another cast assessment for another season of Big Brother, and here we'll be talking about the cast of Big Brother 26. Where in this video, obviously, I'll be running through each member of the cast one by one, talking about my thoughts on them, how they'll do in the game, along with me picking my winner pick for the season, which, if you do not know, I've somehow picked the last 4 winners of the show in the preseason, and 6 of the last 8 winners, so we'll see if that trend continues this time. Probably not, though. Where straight up, I find this cast to be actually one that is a bit tough to assess. I don't actually have that great of a sense of this cast from a gameplay perspective. I feel like a lot of this cast, through all the interviews that have come out, have not really been super in-depth on their overall game strategy, where a lot of the answers have felt very shallow to me. First, straight up, again, don't have the greatest sense of this cast, but we'll still be doing this video anyway. Now, I do want to also mention here the fact that obviously this video will be coming out on Tuesday, where typically I would have a video release on Wednesday. However, due to obviously this cast coming out very late, where actually technically I was planning on this video being out on Saturday, but obviously we didn't get the cast by then. Obviously, again, there won't be a video on Wednesday. This will obviously be the video that was supposed to be in that slot. So again, don't expect the video tomorrow. But again, I wanted to get this video out as quickly as possible. But with that, I do want to talk about my general thoughts on this cast, in the sense that I just feel like this cast is kind of a mixed bag to me. I remember coming out of the 25 cast, I was very excited for that cast. Again, it felt like a cast that was skewing older. It felt like a cast that had a lot of like really inspired casting choices. It also had like Jared Fields, Corey Wartenberger, these people with Survivor connections, where again, I was very excited with the 25 cast. And the 26 cast just feels like a lesser version of that to me, to where it's like, okay, we are still skewing older. I mean, half this cast is over the age of 30. We have 2 people above the age of 50. Again, like, this is a cast that does skew a bit older. I don't think as much as last season, but still, again, definitely more than the typical season. But I also feel like it's a cast that seems to be very recruit heavy. It feels like a cast that does not seem to know what they're doing, with so many of these people seeming to be very recent fans of the show, aka probably just recently told about the show, where while we obviously still keep the diversity mandate, it doesn't really feel in line with the more recent seasons to me. So I'll be honest, I'm not personally that excited about this cast, even though there's a couple people here and there that I am looking forward to seeing. Though, with that, I should also mention the fact that this is not the full cast. We do know that there is a 17th house guest that has not been officially revealed, which supposedly the house guests will have the choice on whether or not to vote them in, or if not, it'll be between certain candidates. Again, we haven't really gotten that clarification, though. Either way, again, I don't mind that twist, even though, again, if they are put in the spot where they can potentially vote in one person, then essentially production is going to rig it in a way for them to actually get in, right? Like, there's no way they're not going to make it, so that 17th house guest actually gets joined to the game. Well, otherwise, again, the other situation is that there's multiple candidates for that 17th slot, and they have to actually vote between those candidates for one person to take that slot. Again, I think that's the more likely outcome, but again, we'll see. Now, for who that person is, again, I'm sure there'll be rumors by the time this video comes out, considering the move-in actually does happen on the day this video will come out, to where, again, I'm sure there'll be names out there. As of right now, I don't really have a super solid name in my mind, though I do think more than likely it will be a notable figure. I don't think it will be just the general concept of an AI being the 17th player. I do feel like that is not very practical to me. I feel like more than likely the 17th player is either a returning player or some sort of pseudo celebrity. I feel like someone that would warrant them being added to the game as a special player. And now that we know that, again, this is a person being added in later, I feel like that makes that even more likely, where beforehand I was thinking that 17th house guest could have potentially been a player that would essentially be like America's player and being forced to do things that AI would tell them to do. Though, again, in this current spot, I do think it's more than likely just some sort of person we know before, but again, I don't know who that person is. But with that, again, let's actually jump into the cast itself. Again, we'll be running through them in alphabetical order of first name. So let's start off with Angela, a 50-year-old real estate agent. And again, this is a very interesting casting choice. I feel like this is one that, again, you don't typically see. Obviously, we did see Felicia last season, who, to be fair, was a decent chunk older. Again, still, someone that is a grandma being in the Big Brother house is obviously something that we don't see that often. And again, I do actually like Angela here. And Angela's just someone that you can very much tell how passionate she is about being there, how she is someone that clearly wants to be there, is just so excited for having this experience, where, again, we see her getting emotional in an interview. And again, I thought she came off extremely likable. I do very much worry for her in the game, though. I really do not get the sense that she is going to be in a good spot. Again, she is obviously much older than the rest of the house, to where I think that could definitely harm her in terms of social positioning, though at the same time, I think, again, she's obviously have a lot of life experience, to where, again, from a more like strategic lens, I can kind of see her being a more cerebral player than most of the rest of the cast, especially considering I don't get the sense that most of the rest of the cast is that strategic. But again, I do very much struggle with how she's going to gel with this house. I mean, she does also say something that I think is a major red flag in her, talking about how how she's like never had experiences like this, living with other people, where again, I don't know how experienced she's going to be and interacting and living with all these different people, where again, I don't get the sense that she's going to gel that well living in the Big Brother house, where again, I do worry for her in that light, though again, I think if she's able to find her footing, find a solid ally, which again, there seems to be a decent amount of people talking about wanting to work with older players, I do think she could potentially do very well in the game, though I just feel like it's a very high variance game, and I think there's definitely situations where she's kind of left out of the core power structure, to where again, I do not feel super confident about her, but I do hope she does well here. Next, we're moving on to Brooklyn Rivera, a 34-year-old business administrator who is also a former pageant girl. And Brooklyn is someone that I think will be incredible TV. I think Brooklyn is someone that will be playing the game extremely hard. However, it's also probably going to be terrible. I do not get this as that Brooklyn is going to be a particularly good player here. And she herself has described herself as a control freak, and someone that, again, I could definitely see her being a person in this like initial majority alliance, and someone that is pretty integral to that alliance, only to have that entire power structure crumble around her. I think that's kind of the sense of the type of player I get from Brooklyn, to where I kind of get like, I don't know, maybe like Libra vibes from her, to where again, I could definitely see a world where Brooklyn is in a good spot for first few weeks, though I just very much struggle seeing her being able to maintain that. Outside of that, again, there's other red flags here. I mean, she does constantly talk about how she's a mom, and also again, supposedly she's friends with Aaron from BB15, which that's also kind of a red flag. Though to be fair, I believe she's also friends with Kat from BB21 through the pageant world. Again, like as a whole, Brooklyn is someone that I think will be fun for the show. I think she's someone that's going to play very hard. I just don't have any faith in it actually going well, considering how aggressive of a personality she seems to be, to where at the end of the day, don't have that much faith in her going on to win this season. Next up, we're moving on to Cam, a 25-year-old physical therapist, and I believe a former football player, and someone that, in general, feels like he ticks all the boxes of what you would want from a Big Brother player. Like, instantly when looking at his interview, I'm like, this is the prototypical Big Brother player. This is the type of person that goes into the house, chill for the first half of the game, no one's really targeting him, but then when people start to target him, he just constantly wins comps towards the end game, and then gets to the end and has a lot of respect through that. Like, I feel like Cam is, again, in line with, like, the Codys of the world, the Haydens of the world, the Xaviers of the world, going to even BB Can, you got Ty from BB Can 9. Again, I feel like that is kind of the mold that Cam is in, to where, again, I think there's a lot of potential here. I think the red flags here are the fact that he is very clearly a recruit. I think he is someone that has not watched much Big Brother. Like, the way he talks about Big Brother is as if he literally just experienced it for the first time, to where, again, I think that is probably what we're looking at with Cam here. I do think he's someone that doesn't really know the game particularly well, with, I believe, him being a social media influencer. That was probably the way he got recruited here, though I do think he has done his research, and I do think he is coming into this game with an interesting strategy. And he is a person that is, again, coming into this wanting to work with the older players, to where, while, again, his reasoning for that might be a bit wonky, I think the fact that he is willing to work outside of his typical archetype, I think is a good sign for the way he's going to play this game. And again, for me, he is a player that in most facets seems to be a purely affable figure. To where, unless there's this big countering to the meta on this season of all the women wanting to get rid of the men due to the recent comp structure, I don't feel like Cam is going anywhere anytime soon, to where, again, if the comps remain the same, he should be someone that steamrolls towards the end, to where, again, I feel pretty good about Cam. I think, again, the worry is his game knowledge, but I do think as a whole, he seems like a pretty prototypical Big Brother player, so he's definitely a winner candidate for me. Next, moving on to Cedric, a 21-year-old former Marine, and Cedric felt a bit much to me. I feel like Cedric felt like someone that was kind of hamming it up in his interviews, someone that was definitely trying to play into this like over-the-top content creator sort of attitude, where I did find that kind of annoying from him. Outside that, I do feel like Cedric, obviously he's young, and I think he does come off as young, and you can definitely tell a lot of confidence from him that I don't know how that's going to really gel with the others, to where in a way he kind of reminds me of Brighton from the Squid Game Challenge and Perfect Match, to where, again, hopefully Cedric's not as terrible of a human being as that person, but I still think Cedric is someone that, again, I don't really get the greatest sense of how he's going to do socially in the house. However, again, if he's able to make it deep into the game, again, he's another one of these people that feels like he's pretty in line to win a lot of those endgame comps. Though, I'll be honest, I do feel less confident about him to make it that far. Again, I think also the fact that he is so young, he is 21 years old, he is the youngest person on this cast. I think that is something that is going to harm him here as well. And again, I also don't get the sense that he knows the game particularly well, to where, at the end of the day, again, Cedric to me is kind of just a worse version of Cam, to where don't feel the greatest about him, to where, again, not moving him on as a winner pick. Next up, we got Chelsea, a 27-year-old nonprofit director who is someone that I just felt kind of nothing with when watching her interviews. She just felt like a player that, again, seems fine in most aspects. Again, I believe she's like a former basketball player, so again, I assume she's going to be pretty physical. She seems decent socially, seems mostly affable outside of some certain beliefs that certain people found online, but also, again, seems to at least like be a fan of the show, at least like knows the show somewhat, to where like in many ways Chelsea kind of reminds me of someone like Mimi from last season. I feel like that's kind of the sense that I get from Chelsea, someone that is, again, probably going to be under the radar for a bit, probably have like a decent core of allies, but I don't really see her playing the game super aggressively. So again, I really did not get that much from Chelsea in the grand scheme of things. Next up, moving on to Joseph Rodriguez, the return of Glenn Garcia from BB18, obviously. But in all seriousness, again, Joseph Rodriguez, age 30, video store clerk, which is weird. Again, obviously there were a lot of questions like how, considering most of them have been shut down. Though, again, doing the research, he actually does work at a video store. So, again, that's something. And Joseph, I do really like. Joseph is one of the bigger fans on the cast. I mean, he is someone that talks a lot about watching too much reality TV. He talks about how his game plan is to play like Dan Giesling, specifically the BB10 Dan Giesling, and lowering your threat level early on and peaking at the end. Again, I feel like there's a lot to like from Joseph in that sense. I feel like he is coming into this season kind of wanting to play the way that most super fans would want to play Big Brother. However, I don't know how it's going to work out for him. Really, as a whole, Joseph is someone that I'm a bit worried about on this season. Not to an extreme. I feel like he's someone that, again, it could go very well. It could go pretty badly. I really don't know how it can go. And I think a lot of it's really going to come down to how good socially he is. And at this current point, again, I don't fully know. I don't really get the sense of how he's necessarily going to interact with the others. But I do think if he is good socially, I could see him being involved in the Majority Alliance and kind of riding that wave there. While otherwise, if he's not in the Majority Alliance, I would very much worry for him. I feel like if he's not in the Majority Alliance, he probably is going to be one of the bigger threats not in the Majority Alliance. To where, again, he feels like this type of person that is probably going to be looked at as this more strategic player, to where, like, unless he's really able to play off the more goofy hipster sort of personality, I do feel like he's going to be someone that is going to be a potential target early on, which I definitely think is a worry. Though in many ways he kind of does remind me of someone like Eden from Australian Survivor, who was also a massive super fan, also a big movie nerd, to where, again, while, again, mixed results for Eden, I think he played well on that season, to where, again, I kind of get the sense from Joseph here as well. Where, again, I think Joseph can potentially play a very good game here, but I just don't know if this is necessarily going to be the cast for him. But though I actually do really like him, to where, again, I'm actually going to move him on as a potential winner pick. Next up, moving on to Kenny Kelly, a 52-year-old former undercover cop, to which, obviously, I mean, I don't know how you see this guy and not think that he was a former cop. Like, just the way he talks is literally verbatim the way that Derek talks. Which is funny considering obviously he talks about being inspired by Derek, and Derek was what got him into Big Brother. And again, you can very much tell he just feels like Derek. Like, literally his mannerisms are very Derek-like, though his cadence is very Derek-like. He just feels like a Derek that's 20 years older. And again, I don't think it's going to go well for Kenny here. Now, I could very much see a world where Kenny is going to play very hard from the beginning, because it seems like obviously he's very aware that he's going to be one of the older people in the house. He is the oldest person on this cast, and that he will need to compensate for that. And again, I could see him being very aggressive off the bat, building a Majority Alliance right away. I just feel like, again, it's probably going to crumble. I very much doubt that Kenny is the type of person that's going to be able to hold a majority group together. But again, I do get the sense that he is at least going to try. He is going to be this guy that is going to be playing hard and keep his ducks in line, though really at the end of the day, I don't really have much faith in him being able to do so. Again, I feel like more than likely people are going to call him out for being a cop very early on. If they do, I feel like that is going to, again, be a big target on his back. Obviously, it's kind of just a known thing in at least the online community, how threatening these like undercover cops can be in a game of social strategy, to where, again, I think Kenny is someone that is not particularly well poised to do well on this season, to where I do think, again, there is some potential there for sure. I just feel like I just have no faith in him actually pulling it off by the end. So again, not someone I'm moving on as a winner pick. Next up, moving on to Kimo Apaka, a 35-year-old mattress sales representative from Hawaii, the first Hawaiian player to be on Big Brother, which, again, weird that took this long. And Kimo is someone here that I really, really liked. I feel like Kimo feels like one of the bigger characters on the board. It feels like he's going to be this larger-than-life personality, someone that is going to be really fun in the DR. And in many ways, kind of reminds me of Jam Jam to a degree. He kind of feels like the Big Brother version of Jam Jam, to where I do get very good vibes from him in that light. However, I do still worry for him, to where while I do think he can be very good socially, I do worry if that's going to garner game respect. shocked. I feel like it could be a world where, yeah, people like him and potentially want to keep him around, but don't necessarily want them in their alliances. Where, again, at least with the Big Brother comparison, I can kind of see him being like the Kevin Campbell, where, again, while Kevin Campbell, again, yes, played a very good game in BB11, I do think he gets a bit overstated for how good of a game he plays in BB11, in the sense that he was, attached to that majority group, the Jesse Alliance, but he was always on the bottom of that group, and he was always in this spot where people within that group wanted him out eventually, and I feel like that's kind of the sense I get from Kimo here. I feel like he's going to be, again, potentially attached to the majority alliance right off the bat, but I don't feel like anyone's really going to want to take him deep into the game, though I feel like Kimo's the type of person that if he makes it to the end of the game, I feel like he would have a decent amount of win equity. Again, he seems like a largely affable figure. If he does have a big target on his back and is still able to get to the end, I feel like that is a pretty good spot for him, to where, again, I would be surprised if he is an early boot. Again, I would assume there's longevity in him. I would assume that he knows the game pretty well. He's a big fan of the show. So again, I have more faith in Kimo here than most other people on the board, despite the fact that I do think there are a lot of hesitancies with him. But again, it's enough that can move him on as a winner pick here. Next up, moving on to Leia. Leia Peters, a 26-year-old VIP cocktail server. And straight up, to give my thought process on this cast, when I first saw this cast, my instant thought when seeing Leia is, I think she might be my winner pick. Again, she is a 26-year-old. Again, kind of in the perfect age for Big Brother, again, having enough life experience while still being able to connect to most people in the house. Again, she is a VIP cocktail server, which has been an occupation that's done pretty well before in Big Brother, where, while, again, the actual quality of the players with the occupation is a little bit hazy, again, it's still one that does perform pretty well. And again, she feels like a purely affable presence, the one that, again, people mostly like. However, her interviews gave me absolutely nothing, where she was so bland in her interviews and had these really long-winded answers to where it just took me completely out of it, to where, again, I do not have Leia as a winner pick at this point, even though, again, my initial instinct was to pick her as a potential winner pick, as I do feel like she is someone that is in the perfect age range. Again, seems to be fine at every aspect of the game outside. Again, strategically, I'm not really sure, considering she is not a fan of the show. I believe she's just recently watched 5 seasons, and beforehand, while her family were super fans, she never personally watched the show, to where, again, not great, but again, seems like someone that I would be shocked if Leia is an early boot. I feel like she's someone that would typically make it deep on any given season, but she's also someone that just gave me nothing for the interviews, to where I do more so look at her as maybe like Alyssa Snyder sort of presence in the game at this point, someone that probably going to be kind of aloof to what's going on, though someone that, again, has some skills for the game, but is never really able to live up to that, to where really at the end of the day, again, not ending up too confident on Leia here. Next up, moving on to Lisa Weintraub, a 33-year-old celebrity chef. And why is Lisa here? Where, straight up, this feels like a casting choice that it feels like Lisa was cast here simply because she had an interesting occupation of being a celebrity chef that they used in the press release of a way to hype up the cast, where it would not shock me if the main reason she is here is literally just for her occupation, as she is so bland outside that, where, like, Lisa's another one. I got absolutely nothing from Lisa. I legitimately do not see what they see in Lisa from a casting perspective. I don't think she really brings anything to the table from my point of view. She seems really bland. She talks about wanting to play the game honestly. She doesn't really seem to know the game. She seems to be a recruit. I really don't know why she's here. Like, in a way, she kind of reminds me of Bowie Jane from last season, where, again, I felt like the same with Bowie Jane, where I felt like Bowie Jane was simply cast because she was Australian and a DJ, which were these things that they could make jokes for on the show. But even here, with Celebrity Chef, what can you even do with Celebrity Chef? Like, at least with the Australian DJ, like, there's certain jokes or segments that they could potentially do with that. I don't even know what they can do with celebrity chefs. Again, to me, she came off very bland and someone that doesn't know the game, to where at the end of the day, not feeling good about her, even though, again, she could obviously make it very, very deep, but again, not really someone I'm looking at as a potential winner. Next, then moving on to Mackenzie Manbeck, age 22, a construction project manager, which is an occupation I did not expect, but Mackenzie also did not come off the most interesting here. I feel like Mackenzie also came off pretty bland to me. Came off as another like Alyssa Snyder sort of figure, someone that is pretty young, someone that doesn't seem to be like super into the game, someone that talked about favorite player being Casey and liking her because she's honest. There again, I don't really get the greatest vibe from Mackenzie. Now, straight up, she could do well. It's definitely, again, like Leia, it doesn't really mean that she's not going to do well in the game. I could see a world where she does make it deep. If she's able to win a lot of endgame comps, she could get to the end with respect. However, she's going to be boring in doing so. So again, from an entertainment standpoint, I don't think she's going to bring much to the table, though from a gameplay perspective, again, she can make it deep and she could win the game. I just don't think it's going to be a particularly interesting run if she does so, to where, again, did not end up picking her as a potential winner pick. Next up, moving on to Matt Hardiman, a 25-year-old tech sales representative, and Matt is someone that I got mixed vibes on. I feel like Matt is someone that I straight up did not move on as a winner pick, though I very much considered it. Matt is someone that, again, I think in many worlds is, again, similar to the likes of Cam. Again, someone that seems full-faceted in most aspects. Again, seems like someone that is very physical to where he can definitely win comps. He is someone that is a fan of the show. Again, he talks about having watched it with his mother and his mom being like a big Julie Chen fan, which is like, but still, again, into the show, can potentially be good socially. I think that's probably my biggest worry for him, where straight up, the vibe I did get from him is that he's kind of a bit rigid in his overall views of the game, where, I mean, he did talk a lot about, like, wanting to target the super fans, and while, again, not necessarily the worst strategy in the world, I feel like the way he talked about it was in a way that felt very dismissive, that he was, like, simply not even going to bother talking to the super fans and going to target them, to where, I don't feel like that's particularly great. Now, again, we've seen that style of strategy be effective. Again, I feel like that's not that dissimilar from something that Jackson did, though also, again, how consistent was Jackson's game anyway? Like, in many ways, like, he kind of reminds me of Brett. I think that's kind of the vibe I get from him. Brett from BB20. Similar job also, but someone that, again, like, on paper has, like, all the skills for the game, but I don't really get the sense that he's the greatest socially, where I don't know if all those things are really going to click together here. To where, again, I was very close to moving him on as a winner pick, but I think in the grand scheme of things, I think he's more than likely, like, a mid-game boot. Someone that, again, kind of probably takes the charge a bit too much and becomes a target because of that. But at the end of the day, again, did not move him on as a winner pick. Next up, moving on to Quinn. Quinn Martin, a 25-year-old nurse recruiter, and I really like Quinn. I mean, Quinn is someone that seems like a massive super fan of the show, seemingly the biggest fan of the show on this season. Again, was making references to many old school players, talking about how he wanted to play the game like Jason Guy, but wanted to add in like a sprinkle of like Jace Wiry and Paul and Brett into it, which was such a random combination of people. But again, like, he is clearly a fan of the show, and I think outside of his like more nerdy aesthetic, I feel like very much comes off as a well-rounded player. I mean, again, he talks about being very athletic. He is a smaller guy from what I understand, where again, he seems to be someone that would do very well at certain endurance challenges. He also, again, seems like a purely affable figure. Again, he knows the game very well. Again, I feel like there's a lot to like from Quinn. I think the worry for me, though, is very clearly, again, the fact that he is clearly coming off as this more intellectual figure, someone that is this nerdier presence on the show, to where, again, we literally have Matt already talking about wanting to target the super fans. I think that is, again, a worry here for Quinn, that he might be targeted right off the bat. If someone like Matt is very gung-ho about going against him, where I feel like someone like Matt is more likely to be initially in this majority alliance, where I can see a world where Quinn is kind of left out of that. And I think if that is the case, that'll be a pretty bad spot for Quinn, though if he's able to survive that, I feel like there definitely is a pretty good path for him beyond that, to where, again, I think he can surprise people, win a lot of comps. He, again, seemingly knows the game pretty well. Again, he talks about wanting to play a rat-like game, to where, again, it gives me a sense that he recognizes the strengths of playing an Andy-like game, to where, again, I do think there's a lot to like from Quinn. Again, I moved him on as a potential winner pick. Next up, moving on to Rubina, a 35-year-old event bartender who I also believe is a roller skating content creator, to where Rubina here seems like one of the bigger characters on the board. I feel like Rubina is one of the people that pops the most as a character, someone that seems to be very vocal, to where I could definitely see her getting on people's nerves, though someone that, again, has a really fun energy and confessional, to where, again, I think she'll be a very fun presence for the show. However, don't know how that's really going to gel in the game. I feel like she seems like the type of person that will just get on people's nerves and potentially have people want to target her. I feel like she's someone that seems like she could potentially get into conflicts with people, to where, mixing out the fact that, again, she's also not a fan of the show and doesn't seem to be the most well versed in the gameplay of the game. I just don't really get a great sense of Rubina from a player perspective, to where, while, again, I think she's going to make for some pretty great TV, I don't think she's necessarily going to make it that deep into the game, to where, again, I could see a world where she's a relatively early boot. Now, to be fair, again, I think there's also a world where she finds her click and is able to ride with that, but even then, I still have almost no real faith in her being able to navigate her way to the end of the game. I don't really get the sense that, again, she is the most strategic presence in the world, to where, while she's constantly talked about, oh, there's only one Rubina, I feel like I've kind of met a lot of people like Rubina, and I feel like those sort of people are not the people that I would expect to do well on Big Brother, to where, at the end of the day, Rubina's not someone I'm looking at too highly, and not a potential winner pick. Next up, moving on to T-Core Clotley, a 23-year-old crochet business owner, and straight up at this point, obviously if you can't tell, T-Core is the last woman on this cast, and straight up, I have not moved on to any women as a potential winner pick at this point, and sadly, I'm not going to move on any women as a potential winner pick. Or straight up, I just find the women field of this cast to be relatively weak, where most of the women on this cast don't necessarily seem like they're going to gel with the house socially and be big targets because of that, or people that don't really seem to know the game and will kind of just be fodder in the house. And because of that, T-Core essentially ends up being the only woman I actually truly considered as a potential winner pick here. And sadly, again, I did not move her on, despite the fact that, again, I think T-Core is someone that could do very well. Again, T-Core seems to be someone that at least like knows about the game. She seems to be someone that could be good socially. I do think the fact that she has this like very unique accent could be something that makes people gel with her from the very beginning, make people be interested in getting to know her and where that comes from, to where, again, I think there's a lot of upside there. I do think, again, some downsides. I think she's, again, a bit on the younger side of things. She's also someone that I can kind of see being used as a bit of a pawn throughout a lot of the game, where, again, I think she'll be pretty well positioned early on. I doubt she'll be targeted, though. I think there's a lot of potential of her being like the week one pawn as someone that people don't think is actually going to go home, which, again, while still will be safe, I think that will probably harm her positioning long term and her probably being left out of things because she's on the block, to where really as a whole, again, I think the people that I did move on are all people that I know are either, again, the more typical Big Brother winner or are big fans of the show that know the game very well, where T-Core, well, again, I think she's more of that than most of the other women on this cast. I don't think it's really enough to put her on as a winner pick, even though she was the one that was the closest to doing so. And finally, the last person on the cast that we have to talk about is Tucker, a 30-year-old marketing/sales executive, to where I believe he is also a model. And Tucker is just kind of a strange figure on this cast, to where I think there are points where Tucker comes off pretty well. I think he does seem to have a personality to where he kind of does remind me of like Jim Carrey at points, to where he does feel like a bit of a unique figure on this cast. However, I feel like that's also the vibe I got from Luke last season. And I think there are like, I got a little bit of worries that this could be Luke 2.0. But sure, that's kind of the vibe I get from him. Again, kind of like the Luke, kind of like the Brett Champagne. Kind of figured out, again, on paper would be this very well-rounded player. Again, someone that seems to be very physical, someone that seems that he could be social, and someone that, again, seems to not know nothing about the game, though also is someone that just feels a bit off, to where, like, something just doesn't gel right with me with Tucker, to where I really do not know how to properly assess him, to where, again, I could see a world where, again, he's on the outs, taken out relatively early. I could also see a world where, again, he's in the initial majority alliance and is able to run that and win a whole bunch of ending comps to win the game. Where, in a way, I look at him as someone that could really go in either direction, where I really just do not get a great sense about how I feel about Tucker and his longevity in this game, to where, well, again, I think there is some upside of him potentially winning the game. Again, for me, it wasn't enough to move him on as a winner pick. But with that, again, that is the entire cast of BB26. Now let's get on to talking about who I am going to pick as my winner pick, to where 4 people I end up moving on here are Cam, Joseph, Kimo, and Quinn, to where, again, we have Cam, who is essentially the prototypical Big Brother winner. Again, someone that is seemingly competent in every aspect of the game, though also, again, is a recruit that doesn't know the game particularly well. While with the other 3 people, they're essentially the 3 bigger fans of this cast. Again, all of them are shown to be big super fans of the show. All of them seem to know the game pretty well, but all of them, I also feel like there are worries about how they'll click with this house. However, the first person I'm going to cut here from this grouping is going to be Kimo. And again, I do really like Kimo. I think Kimo is definitely someone that has potential to win this game, especially if he gets there. I just feel like he's going to struggle in getting there. To where, again, I don't really get the sense that Kimo's going to be this person that wins a lot of endgame comps. To where I also do struggle with really seeing where he lands in this house, to where, again, I think he could be very well liked early on and be taken further into the game. I really just don't know if he's going to be able to do much with that, to where, well, again, I do very much like him and I do hope he does well. I do feel like at the end of the day, I kind of have to drop him off here. Next person I'm going to drop off is going to be Joseph. And again, this is because Joseph is someone that I do also get a bit inconsistent vibes from. I feel like he's someone that, again, knows the show very well, has a very detailed strategy of him coming into it. Again, if he's able to enact that, I think he could go on to win the game. I just don't know if I have much faith in him actually enacting that. To where, again, I do like that he's a big fan of Dan, that he wants to utilize the Dan strategy. I just don't know if he's really in that mold to be able to enact that. To where, again, I kind of get a bit more of a sketchy vibe from him. To where, again, I assume that's the way that he's going to be perceived in the house, where, again, if that is the case, then obviously that's not great, though. Again, there's definitely a world where he is better socially than what I'm expecting, and again, through that would do very well. But again, at the end of the day, I feel like that inconsistency is going to be what leaves him off here as my winner pick. So now we're down to my top 2, where, again, it is this big dilemma here between Cam and Quinn. Again, 2 polar opposites. Again, Cam, again, someone that doesn't know the game that well, very well rounded in most aspects, where you got Quinn, who, again, is potentially that, though also is someone that is a bit nerdier, someone that I don't know if he'll click with the house initially, even though he seems to be seemingly good strategically and someone that will surprise people physically, to where, again, it's a big debate between two. And again, I think this is a very, very close pick here, especially considering the fact that none of these people really pop for me. I don't feel like this is a situation where I really have this like very solid answer here. Though the person I am going to end up picking here is Cam. And again, Cam is the more boring pick. I think Cam is the most generic pick on the board. Again, someone that, again, feels very in line with a lot of recent winners. So while, again, there is that lack of game knowledge that could definitely bite him, I do think Cam is someone that is very well poised to win this game. I think he is someone that definitely gives you a lot of like Monty vibes as well, where straight up, obviously, Monty doesn't go on to win the game, but it was very close to doing so. To where, again, even if Cam is able to replicate the Monty gameplay style, that's still a spot where he gets very close to winning the game and very likely beats most people at the end. To where, considering the fact that, again, like we saw in BB25, that comps were still the same and allowing these more physical presences to dominate a lot of the endgame comps. And you saw someone like Jag, who was a complete mess strategically for a lot of the game, wanted to win the game. Again, I think there's definitely a solid chance that Cam goes on to win this season. So again, that's the reason I went with him here over Quinn, who, again, while I would like Quinn to do better, and I probably have more faith in Quinn's overall strategic ability, I do still feel like there's that high variance there that makes me go with Cam, who I think is much more likely to make it deep into the game, no matter how the initial power structure lays out. With that, again, that is the cast of BB26. Now, obviously, moving forward, I'll be doing the same content that I've done for previous seasons. I'll be doing a mid-season power ranking, along with a review and player ranking at the end of the season. Beyond that, I also have my Big Brother winner ranking that I redid that will come out at some point, which you can technically already watch on the $5 membership tier if you're so interested. But either way, I mean, obviously just expect more of the same style of content from the channel. But for now, that is the video. Thank you for watching.